Hello and welcome to All You Can Board. I am Carlo and I'm here with my cousin Dylan, and today we are doing episode 13 of Own It, Play It, or Skip It. So this is a series where we review games based on one of basically three metrics. We basically tell you if, from our perspective, the game is something that we are happy to own, happy we've played, or feel like we should have skipped kind of thing. So we've got 4 games here today. We're each going to be covering 2 of them. How's it going today? How are you feeling about these games?
I'm feeling good. I'm actually excited to talk about the 2 I have. I'm excited to talk about both of the games that you've played. The 2 of us have played all 4 of these games.
Yep.
So I think this will be one where, even though I'm gonna give my verdict on these 2 and you're gonna give your verdict on those, maybe we each kind of weigh in on what we would have rated, just because it'll add a little bit more interest. So
sounds good. Yeah, we'll try to remember to flag which ones, but 3 of these 4 are review copies as well.
Yep.
And yeah, do you want to take it away with the first game here?
Yeah. Okay. So the first game we're gonna cover here is a newer game. It's from Pandasaurus, and again, it was provided as a review copy, and that is After Us. So After Us is a deck building game that has a pretty unique twist on it, and the unique twist being I'm calling it unique because the only other place that I've personally seen it is it's similar to a mechanic that's in Tainted Grail's combat system, and that's that you have your deck that you're, like, as in most deck building games, you're gonna have a deck there. All deck building games have a deck. And you're gonna draw 4 cards off the top, and these 4 cards are gonna have these little boxes on them. And you are basically having to take these 4 cards and decide how you wanna line them up so that the boxes either complete a full rectangle or they don't complete, and then that is gonna mean if they're not completed that you're not gonna get the resources listed there. So the first phase of this game is essentially everyone sort of just putting the cards however they want them, and then saying, okay, based on how I've laid it out here, these are the resources I collect. There's 3 different resources. I don't know the names of all of them. I'm also the person, as we've gone over many times in these videos, that I don't call things by what they actually are. I just call them like the blue resource, the orange resource, and the black resource. And there's also energy, which I do know that one because I was calling it batteries, and it's actually energy. See, that's why I don't call the things, because when I try, I just get it wrong anyway.
Yeah,
so I'm like,
exactly.
whatever, I'll just call whatever I want. So you're collecting resources based on how you lay out these cards in the first phase. After that, you're using the resources that you've collected to buy new cards, as most deck builders have. You're buying level 1s, in this case, of 4 different type of monkey cards, primate cards, or level 2s, if you can afford them. Level 2s cost more. You're supplementing or adding those to your discard pile. They'll eventually get shuffled into your deck. This is basically a race game. You're racing to 80 points. Whoever gets to 80 points first wins, and then, like many games like that, it ramps up where at first you're gaining very little points, you're spending time building your deck, and then all of a sudden everyone sort of switches gears into, I'm going to spend my stuff on points now, and then it just ramps up and the conclusion happens really quick. So After Us, I will say that the actual part where you are organizing your cards and trying to figure out, where you want to position everything to maximize your resources, I do enjoy it. I would say that it's by the end of the game, I'm like, okay, like I enjoy it, but I've also have had enough of it by now. If the game was any longer, I think I'd be feeling a little bit tired of that mechanic. But it is fun, especially as you get the more powerful cards to try to line them up and say, okay, I can't get everything here, so what am I willing to sacrifice? How do I position it to maximize the points I can get for the cheapest cost? Like, that's a really fun mechanic, especially at the first few times you're playing this game. The issue overall, and actually one more thing I'll mention, is just there are these power cards that are in each game. You distribute 3, the other ones aren't used in the game, so there will be a bit of a change every game on the power cards that are in there. You use the energy that you collect on these power cards, and they can do things like get you additional primate cards cheaper, they can get you straight up points. There's a whole bunch of different powers there.
You can get Rage, which allows you to trash cards.
Right, Rage is another big mechanic, yeah. So every 4 Rage you've collected, you can use it anytime on your turn to trash a card from your display there, and that's how you thin out your deck, and like most deck builders also have a thinning mechanic as well. So yeah, the issue I have with After Us, there's a couple. So one, we've played this on Board Game Arena, so it is on Board Game Arena. We played a bunch there, and then we played it 2-player, myself and CARLO, and in all the cases, and more so it kind of came out when we played the physical version, is you're kind of just doing your own thing. And doing your own thing, we need to, you know what, it's been a while since we've coined a new phrase. Okay. So top shelf billing was coined a while ago, and I bring that up specifically, usually only in our collection roast videos. Yeah. But I'm gonna coin a new term, and this is gonna be called mumble games.
Mumble. Yeah, I was expecting mumbly games. Or
this is a mumble game. Okay. So this is now gonna be an official AYCB term. I'm gonna bring it out when there's a mumble game. So we call this a mumble game because it's a simultaneous play in that first phase, and it's basically like me and Carlo are playing it, and it's basically spent going, okay, and I collect 1 resource for this, and I got 1 blue one here, and I get an orange one for this. Oh, and I'm going to get 2 points for this.
And we're both at the same time,
yeah,
just sitting at the
simultaneous.
table.
So the more people you have, the more mumbling you have at the table. But like because you don't want to not do simultaneous because it's just going to prolong this game, and it already kind of at times feels like it's already a little bit long.
Well, and the rewards that you get aren't like particularly interesting. No. So even if I did watch you, I'm just like, okay, you get an orange resource, you get a blue resource, okay, like you can just speed things up kind of thing.
So
like
it's everyone doing their own thing. The only player interaction that exists in this game, and it feels tacked on almost like they were like, oh, there's no player interaction, what can we add in? Is you pick these tokens at the end of near the end of each round, and the token gets you a specific little bonus like 2 points or 2 rage or reusing an ability on one of your cards. But your opponent will then have a chance, everyone around the table will have a chance to look at one of their opponent's tokens and choose to spend 2 resources to use someone else's token, which it's a cool thing to be able to be like, oh, based on what's chosen, I can get another bonus. And you would think, oh, maybe that's going to factor into what will I choose to maybe block my opponent. But it doesn't really have a huge bearing on the game. Even the token in general, I would say, there's most out of the 4 tokens in there, I generally almost always pick the rage token or the one that reactivates reactivates an ability. Sometimes the point one if you just want to get straight points, but in general it almost just seems like that token is boiled down to like get more rage or reuse a thing to get more points or something, right?
Yeah.
And so using an opponent's, you kind of know what's going to be available, especially if there's a lot of players in the game. So it just doesn't feel that interesting to me, and that is the only player interaction. So that being said, like, there are great situations to play games and great groups where you kind of just want all of your own activity. Maybe you're talking around the table. It's not necessarily a knock on that aspect in general. It's just that there are better games to play that are everyone doing their own thing, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I could, if I really wanted to, we could do a list where it's like top 10 games where people are doing their own thing.
Yeah, like multiplayer solitaire type games.
And this wouldn't be on it. It might not even be close. So. Yeah. It's not that I didn't have fun playing After Us, and there was many moments, especially when you were playing the BGA game as well, where I'm like, oh yeah, this is cool, or it's cool to, okay, Braden's getting a huge lead here. How do I try to like ramp up my points so that I can try to catch up? Like, there's moments like that, but I never left a game being like, oh, After Us is a game I'm going to suggest I'm going to want to play again and everything. It's just kind of okay. So that all being said, based on me and games like this, I would skip it only because I would just say, if you came to me and said, I want a game where everyone's doing their own thing and we can kind of talk and chat, I'm not going to recommend After Us first. It might be like, down the list something I'd recommend, or if you're like, I also love the theme of monkeys and stuff like that, maybe. Which maybe I've talked a lot. Why don't you talk about another issue we have, which is the theme itself?
So the theme is just, it feels like this could have been any theme. Like the theme is, I guess, like it's kind of, so it says in the back, in 2083, humanity has been extinct for several decades, and in this abandoned world, primates continue their evolution, gather in tribes, and tame human objects. So you're basically at the head of one of these tribes, and you're trying to like kind of rebuild this collective intelligence and kind of like rebuild civilization. But like that doesn't really come through at all. Like you have the different primates, and they kind of have their own themes generally with the cards that you're getting. Yeah. But even you were pointing out as we were playing, like even if you look in the stack of gorillas or the stack of chimpanzees, the artwork in the game is great. Really nice. Vincent Dutrait, like you can't go wrong. It's really, really nice. But every single primate card has the exact same art, or every chimpanzee card has the same art. Every gorilla card has the exact same art. So they've reused that, and the cards themselves don't have any like identity really. Like if you buy a card or you buy 3 or 4 different types of like gorilla cards, like later there isn't like a name on the card or something that identifies it as something that you're going to remember or even know which cards you're really getting. They all just kind of blend together in this kind of like sort of ambiguous.
In many ways, it feels like they had this concept of the boxes and linking them, and they built a game around that because that's the most unique thing in here. Because as a deck builder, it's not interesting to me to add cards to your deck in a deck builder where every card has the exact same artwork. Like if I was playing Clank and every card had the same artwork, I don't know if I'd like Clank as much. I like where every card has its own unique flavor and personality and everything, right?
Yeah, you're like, ooh, the whatever boots, or the scepter or something. It's like, it's cool to see something that feels unique and you get excited about adding a card in.
So it's not that the theme itself's not cool. It's just that there's only some minor ways it comes through. The rage being that like the gorillas are taking out one of your own members is a cool way to kind of view that. But generally, like it never, as I'm playing, am I feeling like, oh yeah, I'm rebuilding humanity, or like you're it's a resource collection game to get points. Like that's essentially what it is, and it's a race for points. Like you never really comes through what we're doing to rebuild humanity.
The other thing too is when you buy cards, you're buying cards face down from a deck. You don't even get to see the card you're getting. You just know that generally a level 2 gorilla is going to be like good at giving me rage or having abilities that produce rage, or these other type of primates are going to maybe give me more opportunities for points. So you have an idea of what you're buying, but you're not actually looking at the cards. So you're just kind of like, there's a luck element to what you end up getting. And also, when do these cards come up? Do you draw a hand where your cards line up in a way where you're triggering a lot of abilities, or do your cards not come up at the right times? And it kind of felt like when we played, there were a couple times where I felt like I did well, but it just felt lucky that like, oh, I drew these 2 cards together, and if I line them up, there's just this like get 3 points ability that I'm just going to trigger like 6 times this turn, which is like a big chunk of my points. And like, did I really deserve that? Did I work hard for it? It kind of just fell in my lap. I don't know.
Yeah, there's things I like about it. I don't dislike the game. I've skipped games before, or would have skipped games based on like, I don't like this game. It's not a dislike, it's just that there are a lot better games I'd recommend as deck builders. There's a lot better games I'd recommend as like personal activity games. So I think it just falls in a weird spot. I think it's got great artwork. I think it's got some unique mechanics. I just think that the entire package together doesn't impress me or shine amongst like the crowd of board games that we play every single year. So
yeah, and I think game after game, I don't know how much replay value there is, because other than just going for slightly different combinations of primates, like ultimately you're just trying to be as efficient as you can at converting your resources into points and racing ahead, right?
And it plays 1 to 6. I don't know that I ever really want to play it with 6, 5, maybe even 4.
In person that'd be a lot, I think.
Yeah, we played it with 3 on BGA. That seemed okay. In person we played with 2. 2 would probably be our preferred count because it's the quickest pace for the game. I think
and the least amount of mumbling.
Yeah,
6 people around the table going, oh, it's a good one. Everyone's hands are just reaching in, grabbing resources from the common piles.
Yeah, so this is a skip for me. What would it be for you?
It would also be a skip for me. Well. Okay. But I agree with you. It's not. I don't dislike it. It doesn't do enough to make me really want to play it. But if someone wanted to play it, I wouldn't, be like super against the idea. It's just, it's just kind of okay.
Yeah. So that's After Us, and that's our AYCB's first mumble game.
Love the term. We're definitely going to be using that a lot more. All right. First one up for me today is Wizards of the Grimoire. So this was also a review copy. This was from, I believe it's called Grimoire Games. So this is designed by, I believe they're brothers. Joe and Cole Banning? Oh, now I forget.
Let's just say
anyway, they're the Banning brothers, yes. Wizards of the Grimoire. So this is a 2-player only card dueling game. So it's kind of in that same realm as games like Magic, Keyforge, Hero Realms, Radlands, that kind of stuff. It's not it's not a lane battler, but you are each playing as a wizard with 60 health. You're gaining spells throughout the game, going back and forth, attacking each other, and the first person to get the other player deplete the other player's health wins the game. So it's pretty simple. Unlike some of those other games, you don't have creatures or things in front of you that can block, so all the damage that you do just automatically goes through to your opponent. But what I like about this game that sets it apart is that you are actually building up, so there's a common pool of like 10 spells. There's a unique deck of these spell cards. I think there's 70 or 80 in the base game. And this box comes with a little micro expansion as well. You basically shuffle them up and you're going back and forth. You're basically on your turn, you're going to acquire one of the 10 spells and add it to your grimoire. And then you're going to cool down any spells that you had from before, draw some mana, and then you're going to be able to activate any spells you have in front of you that are not on cooldown. So your spells will have different costs, ranging from I think 1 to 5, and that's the number of mana cards that you're going to take from your hand to place on them, showing that now this is going to take potentially, however many rounds for it to cool down, because every round you're taking 1 card off of every spell in front of you. So the higher the cost of a spell, the less often you're going to be able to use it, but the more powerful it's going to be as a result, because it's a more rare occurrence. And so you're basically just going through, you can have a max of 6 spells in your grimoire. Once you're filled up at the start of your turn, you can gain a new spell, but you have to get rid of a previous one. So the spells that you have, you don't have a deck, you don't have a discard pile, nothing. Your spells are always just in front of you. It's just a matter of, are they on cooldown or are they available to be used? Some of the effects are instant, some of them are ongoing and that kind of thing. That's the basic idea of the game. And then, at the end of your turn, you can use these mana cards to do basic attacks as well. But you're basically just trying to build up a little combo or find synergies with cards to defeat your opponent. So I've played this quite a bit. I've played this almost 10 times now, I think. It's on Board Game Arena as well, along with After Us. So if you want to try this on Board Game Arena, give it a shot there. We just played the physical copy as well, since you hadn't tried it before. So I'll say right now, this is a play it for me. I would say it would be closer to an own it than a skip it, but it's probably somewhere right in the middle of a play it, where it's like a solid. Anyone who's interested in these types of games, if you like games like Magic, those kinds of games, I recommend that everyone should at least try this, because I think some people are going to really, really like it, and other people might say like, yeah, it's pretty good, I'm glad I played it, I don't need to play it a whole lot more kind of thing.
Maybe what I'll do is I'll put I'll start putting a graphic, like a bar on the screen that has own it. I don't know where they're going to be.
Like a wavelength scale?
Well, yeah, but this will just be like a long bar. It'll be like own
Right.
it, skip it, and play in the middle. Because we've had a couple of videos now where it's like closer, it's a play, but closer to it.
Well, because played is such a wide range of games,
Yeah.
right? It's like, it's not necessarily a must own, but it's also not a don't worry, but
Yeah.
like don't bother with this game. But yeah. So what did you think? We just played it.
Yeah, I really like it. This is like, it would be a play for me too, but I would have to play it a lot more. I've only played it the one time now, but I played a lot of games like this. It felt very Hero Realms-ish to me, but like I from one play, I think I would like this more than Hero Realms.
Okay.
I won't get into all the reasons why, because there would be a lot of things I don't like about Hero Realms, but it's quick playing. I picked up the rules really quick, and the idea that there's 70 to 80 cards or whatever it is in there, and it's clearly expandable, like games like this are. Like Hero Realms has been expanded in like big ways. And there's so much variety. I love the idea of kind of almost like if you're someone who likes roguelike video games,
Right.
the idea that you can like approach what's out there and be like, okay, what's my build going to be? Like, I'm going to start by doing this, and then if the right cards come up, I'll keep working on that, or else I'll ditch these cards and try amend my build this way so that I can try to power up this one spell and get this one spell going. Or the build I did when we played was I had a bunch of instant casts and a card that would remove or basically make them cast quicker, removing one of the mana cards from each of them. So I was casting my cards quicker. And so being able to look at the selection, create a build, and try to make that work is something that just always appeals to me in board games, card games, video games. So I really, really like that. I think that my only concern, I think it would be something that you've already kind of talked about, is just over time, if I played this, like if I sat down and played it a whole bunch on Board Game Arena, I got into it, or I had my own copy and I was playing a bunch with people in person, would after a while I'd be like, yeah, okay, I've seen these cards enough times, or I'm making enough of the same builds that it just feels a little too samey, and it's less interesting. It's like, and you mentioned that a lot of the games feel like they're close at the end anyways.
Yeah.
So like our game felt close and that felt exciting, but it's less exciting if every game's close.
That's
right?
exactly it. Yeah, I think of all. Again, I've played it about 10 times, and I think only one game did I have where, whoever won, the other player wasn't going to win on their next turn. But
Right.
almost every time it's like, on my next turn, you were at 3 health, I would have, and so it ends up feeling like not a bit of a coin toss, but to an extent, like everything is incremental. You're almost always going to be able to do a basic attack at the end of your turn that does anywhere from 1 to 4 damage.
Yeah.
And because we're taking turns acquiring spells, you're often having the same number of spells and being able to do at least some damage on your turn. So like sometimes the difference between one player's capabilities and another player's feels a little bit incremental, and it's not enough of a substantial difference to be like, am I building out a completely different Grimoire than you?
Yeah.
That being said, like I also don't want to be too harsh, because there are genuinely different combos that you can find, different synergies, and I've had games where I have a bunch of really low-cost spells and I'm casting them quite a bit. Every turn I might cast 4 or 5 of those, but they're giving me small effects. And then other games I've had where you maybe have a few big abilities and you're not doing much on every turn, but when you do cast a spell, it hits really hard, or you're able to use a spell multiple times because you're using another one in conjunction to pull the mana cards off to make it cool down quicker. So there is some room there. I think there's like a little bit of a missed opportunity in terms of the range of effects that you can have on the cards, because even though there are 70 or 80 cards, most of the effects are some combination of either do damage, gain more mana cards in your hand, give your opponent mana cards, remove mana cards from the cards in play to cool them down, and there's like a lot of just different combinations of those same abilities.
Yeah.
I wish there was a little more like creative exploration in terms of things like maybe you have a card where it's like, it's a really good card, but now you can't do basic attacks anymore for the rest of the game while the spell's in play. Or like make your opponent discard half the cards in their hand, or like big plays that make you go like, whoa, that card is crazy. Everything just feels a little like reined in a little bit.
And and to be fair, like games like this, they're almost like they're almost built to be expanded on. Like,
Yeah.
I can look at this framework and I can be like, there's lots of ways they can expand it. Some that would probably make it too complicated. Others that would just be interesting. Like maybe there's spells you play that it gets you an additional, like from off the side, like a 5 mana power mana card, or like
or you can have a 7th spell in your Grimoire or something like that,
so
right? Game breaking almost.
Exactly. I think that's like, I had lots of fun with my game. I'm gonna play this a whole bunch more. Like I really like it. That's literally my only concern. It's more just like over time, am I gonna be like, yeah, I don't really want to play it anymore because I've seen enough. But at that point, is there more content out there that I love the system enough that it's like, oh yeah, I'll go get this pack of 40 cards that you can shuffle in or replace or whatever to shake up the formula. And if that is happening and it's really, you know, inexpensive and accessible to just add these new additions in, if I found someone, or if we got really into just like every time we went to the cabin, or every time we're getting together for games, like let's finish tonight with throwing down a game of Wizards of the Grimoire, like being like, hey, let's add that pack of cards in this time. Let's do this. Like that to me is really an attractive thing. So I think that there's tons of potential, and I honestly can't wait to play it more. It's more just, like over time, is it going to hold up? Yeah,
and we should say too that like for those who might not watch the channel as much, we were coming at this game as people who've played a lot of these types of games. Like we used to play a ton of Magic when we were kids. We've between Keyforge and Marvel Champions and Hero Realms and Radlands.
Are you talking about Magic, or are you talking about Magic?
Magic the Gathering.
Magic. Okay.
But like in general, this is in a really, really like crowded field, and a lot of games come out that are like 2-player head-to-head dueling games, and a lot of them like don't interest us. So like even though this is kind of only a play it, I also have to commend it for standing out in a very crowded field for that aspect of that you're building a grimoire and your spells don't need to be drawn from a deck, or there's no discard
really
pile. Like the fact that you're building them out is really cool. And I would say the early game is my favorite because you don't like, there's so many, it feels like there's all these possibilities. You're taking your first couple spells and you start to see, okay, I got my second spell and my third spell, and you're starting to see things come together and start to click. It feels really satisfying, and then the end just feels like that race to kind of just finish off your opponent.
And it does feel satisfying when your combo and your build comes together and you're like, okay, this is working how I intended, or an aspect of it is. Like that's how I felt when I played. So I left pretty impressed, but having not played it before. So.
Yeah, and I'm quite sure that this is their first design. So like hats off to, again, the Banning brothers for a solid first design. This went through Kickstarter. They did it well. The quality of the cards is among the best I've ever seen in any game. Seriously, right? Like those really thick cards. You don't need to sleeve these. They're super durable. Riffle, shuffle, whatever. The art looks great too. Like
every game that is just a card game should have like a requirement to have the quality of cards that this game does. So because that's their only. I know it increases the cost and everything. It's not practical, but like they're just so much. It's so enjoyable to play with cards that are of this high quality.
Yeah. And also one last thing is that there's no other like tokens or it's just 2 decks of cards. You have your spell cards and your mana cards.
A pure card game.
It is.
And if people were interested in that, like where would they watch a video about
probably somewhere up here there would be a link to click on, I think.
I think we played that
picking up what you're putting down?
Yeah.
So anything else you want to add about Wizards of the Grimoire?
No, I think that's it.
Cool.
Like I said, it would be a play for me as well, I think, at this point.
Cool. Yeah, so that is Wizards of the Grimoire.
Nice. Okay. Next one, a game that has gotten, I think, a decent amount of buzz. A lot of people have talked about it.
A decent amount. Come on.
That is Earth. This is from Inside Up Games. This is also was sent to us as a review copy. We've had for a bit. I played the physical version. We played a bunch of it on Board Game Arena. This is one of the ones we played at the cabin, actually.
Yes.
And at the cabin, we are actually going to have a cabin video coming out sometime soon. And that was filmed before this video, so if you see us talking in that video about like our first impressions, just know that this we've played lots more since then.
Yeah.
So Earth is a game I'm really excited to talk about. I have lots of thoughts about this. I'll try to keep it concise. I'm going to start by saying I really, really like Earth. And what's interesting is that there's a lot of games I've played that have similar aspects to it. I find there's a lot of similarities to like Terraforming Mars in it. Now I'm forgetting the other ones. But Wingspan, yeah. So Wingspan, Terraforming Mars, like it's almost like this niche of games that kind of have similar mechanics or different similarities in them in terms of the way that you collect points and in the way that you're carrying out your turn. It has
building up the tableau, triggering things,
and also the fact that like when I take an action, everyone else is going to benefit off of my action if they want in some way.
Simultaneous thing, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that what I love about Earth so much is that in the same way that we're talking about Wizards of the Grimoire, building out your own sort of like your system that you're going to have or whatever, you have that right from the very start with Earth, and you get a selection of cards. I think it's like your climate card, and I'm going to forget the names of all of them, but essentially
your terrain card
yeah,
or something like that.
And essentially your starting cards that are going to give you your starting abilities that you're going to benefit from, an in-game scoring condition. You're also going to have the selection of cards there for everybody that are like the objectives you're all going for, and if you get there first, you get more points than anyone else, and then the two end game scoring cards there. So there's a lot of stuff you're targeting. So at the very beginning, it can seem overwhelming because you're like, okay, I have to go for my own end game scoring condition. I got to go for these two public end game scoring conditions, and then I also have to be the first one to these four things, while also collecting cards that are going to have their own synergies and stuff. Even though it was overwhelming at the start, I found that with how many games I've played of it now, I have a lot of fun looking at what I'm dealt in my opening hand. My opening hand size is different every game based on the starting cards you pick as well, which is cool. And I can really kind of say, okay, like my strategy is going to change as I go, but what am I going to target first? Which card am I going to go for first? Which icons am I going to go for out of the 4 season icons that are on the cards? Because I might have a card that says for every winter card, you get 2 points at the end in your tableau. Like, even though I think we both agree there could be a lot more variety in the cards, and the same thing we thought with like Terraforming Mars or like Arc Nova.
I mentioned Arc Nova as well.
Yeah. I for some reason, Earth out of all those games resonates with me the most, and it doesn't bother me as much as it does in other games, the lack of uniqueness or originality across some of the cards. Even though a lot will have the same abilities that are triggering off of them, I just really enjoy the gameplay loop and the gameplay system in Earth. And so just for people who haven't played, there's basically 4 different actions that you're choosing, and one is going to allow you to plant cards in your tableau. One's going to get you more soil, so that you can, which is essentially what you use to buy or to pay to plant cards. So it gets you, it's composting or so you're taking 5 soil, you're also putting cards into your compost section. Yeah, compost. I keep looking to you for verification.
And the judges.
And I can't remember the name of the other 2, but it's the yellow and blue ones. And one of them is what you're doing to get these little cubes onto your cards, which are sprouts. And you can use sprouts to pay for other things, or they will give you straight up every sprout is worth a point at the end of the game. Or you're building up these little trees for canopies, or to try to get the canopy at the top. You get a bonus if you are able to cap it with a canopy. Every card will have a different requirement for how many you have to go up before you're allowed to put a canopy on it. Each of those will be worth 1 point, but again, there's things you can spend those. And so between the trees you're building up, the sprouts, the compost pile that you have, all of those are going to get you a single point for everything. So they might seem similar. It's like, everything gets you 1 point, but based on the cards you have, it's like, okay, maybe this one I'm going to go for the trees. I'm going to try to cap off a bunch of canopies. I've had games like that. I've seen where you have like a compost pile, like 70 cards. That's 70 straight up points in there, right? And I've played games like that too, where I build up my compost pile. Other games I have like barely any compost because I'm using it to pay for other things. Yeah. I even though there's similarities all those mechanics, it's fun to be like, what am I building my tableau around based on the cards I'm getting, based on what the requirements are. I've just really, really enjoyed that whole system. I find that the physical components are really fun are really enjoyable to play with and to put on the cards. One of my main issues with it is that in every game I've played of Earth, I find that the 2 actions that I can't remember the name of, the blue and the yellow ones, are like rarely picked. Yeah. Like rarely picked. And to the point where I thought maybe it was just like, and I thought maybe like, are we just not picking it? And if we were like, really going to try to get the best scores we could in Earth, maybe you would. But like, I've played with a variety of people, and it's not that they don't get picked. It's just that it rarely feels like the right move, because if I'm the one who picks that, that's usually enough for my opponents to piggyback off of it. Then now they don't have to pick it. And so like, do I want to be the one to bite the bullet and pick that, or would I rather just compost, get soil, and get the cards that other people are going to get from other people planting and stuff, and then just continue to play cards, right? Yeah.
Well, and I also feel like a lot of the common scoring goals that you're talking about often trigger off of like having certain card types in your tableau or having certain icons that are on the cards. So usually if you can afford to plant cards, it feels like planting cards is better by default. Yeah. And if you're the one taking the action, you're also drawing cards and getting to keep one at the end of your turn. So you're passively getting more cards while also playing. Yeah. And I don't remember if you mentioned this yet, but it's the first person to complete a 4x4 tableau of 16 cards that triggers the end of the game. Yeah. So you don't want to fall behind and not be playing cards, building up for this like late game engine while other people are racing ahead. So you want to be able to keep up and play lots of cards, which again makes you feel like you're not taking those other actions as much, because if you have a giant hand of cards at the end of the game, it doesn't do anything for you.
I will say that they're like, as much as you don't want to fall too far behind, I've had 2 games where I didn't complete my tableau, and one time I think I was a 4 card short, and one of those games I won, and the other one I actually was like in contention still.
Okay,
but that's because I knew that my score wasn't coming largely from my tableau. It was coming from the compos. It was coming from the trees and the canopies and stuff. So you have to be building a system that is working where you don't need to fill your tableau. Yeah. I've had other games where I'm just planting all the highest point cards. Like we had one game where we played where I think it was like a 4-point difference between us, where I got like 50 to 60 points just off the points that are on the cards in my tableau, whereas you got nothing there, or not nothing, but you got
like a
little
lot
there,
less,
but got tons in your combo. So I like that everyone is kind of doing a little bit of a different thing. I think I'm always going to have an async game of Earth going for a while. Like I really do enjoy it. I'll say it's an own it for me. I really like it, and it's like, if me personally at this point, I would, if someone said you have to choose one of these style of games to keep, I'd get rid of Terraforming Mars. I wouldn't need Ark Nova in my collection. Like I get my fix from this type of game from Earth. I really do enjoy it, and I don't even think I know all the reasons why this resonates with me more than the other ones. I just really am enjoying the build of what my tableau is going to look like, how that's going to work with what all the goals are. Can I find a way to get like multiple goals on the same turn, which I actually just did on an async game, and it felt super satisfying to do.
Yeah, where you can.
The event cards we didn't talk about. I think the event cards are one of the most interesting parts of the game. You can play them at any point on any player's turn, and sometimes they like, a lot of times they'll be like spend a resource of one type to like do something else, and a lot
of the time they have negative point value. It's like lose 3 points by playing this, but it like it's like usually like natural disasters, like it's like a typhoon or like a hurricane or something. So you lose something in order to like, maybe you like lose cards from your compost pile to draw some cards, or you lose some of your growths on some things, but now you get some soil as a result or something like that.
Yeah, there was a game where it's the only time I've seen the card come up, but I had a card in my tableau that was, at the end of the game, you score 1 point for every card in your hand, and it's up to a max of 30.
Right, yes,
And I had an event card that was like, get rid of 9 sprouts or 8 sprouts, whatever it is, and draw like 6 or 7 cards. And I had a bunch of other ways to draw cards. And so at the end of the game, when I felt like, this is one of the games where I didn't finish my tableau, I ended up switching gears and I stopped planting, and I just tried to fill my hand to 30 cards.
Yeah.
And like doing things like that, like it's even though there's, like we say, there's not a lot of unique cards, there's been moments where I'm like, wow, I'm going for a completely different condition. I'm playing completely differently on this game than I did the last few.
Yeah.
So that's what I've really enjoyed with Earth. Like I really love it. I'm interested to hear your thoughts, because I think you have you feel differently about it than me. But me, it's an own it. I really do enjoy it.
Cool. I don't think I feel too like that much differently than you. I think I so far enjoyed a bit less than you do. I think part of it is like, you glossed over Race for the Galaxy when talking about
Of course I did.
It's the simultaneous action selection. Like for me, it's such a tough thing to even compare to, because of how much I love Race for the Galaxy and how many times I've played it or whatever. But just in terms of those other ones you've talked about, for comparison's sake, when you're talking Earth with like Wingspan, Terraforming Mars, Ark Nova, or whatever, I would probably still put Ark Nova above this.
Okay.
But like after Race for the Galaxy, then Ark Nova, this would probably be next. And then I would probably have the others, like you mentioned, Terraforming Mars and Wingspan and whatever else would probably be below this.
Yeah.
I've been surprised that my initial, and when you're talking about that cabin video, I think I was ragging on the fact that like, and it does say on the back, 283 Earth cards. I do think that's still too many cards in the deck.
Yeah.
I think they could have pared things down a bit so that certain cards or certain abilities feel more unique and exciting, and so that when you're drawing cards, maybe you have a better idea of what you may or may not get, because it is very, like, you never know what you're going to get.
And
you never plan around
You say
much.
too many cards, but I guess like one of the reasons they have to is because you can end up with a compost pile of like 60 to 70 cards, whatever.
It's true.
But
yeah.
I know what you mean. I think it's more like that many cards, you would want there to be more uniqueness
exactly
to justify there being almost 300 cards.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, exactly. It's like if you go somewhere to get some orange flavored thing and they have like clementine flavor and tangerine flavor and whatever flavor. It's like, well, they're all kind of orange. Like that's what I mean. It's like, it's not that you have too many flavors, just like I want some more diversity if you're gonna have this many. So that's kind of how I feel about that. But I've been surprised that ever since those initial plays where I had those complaints, that like what you're saying totally rings true about like the point distribution at the end is often very different. Like you said, you can have games where you have nothing in your compost pile to having 80 cards in there, and it's crazy that the game works with having such variability in that sense. And it is kind of fun seeing at the end like all the different scoring categories. Like the first couple times I played it, the game felt a bit messy and like a bit underdeveloped maybe. Like it felt like it could have been tightened up. But it feels like it's such a weird game for me because the more I play it, I find that it's like it's addictive, and I'm being pulled back to keep trying it. And there's something that's like, oh, but wait, but maybe you can build an engine where like and you start off doing something, and if you have a bunch of cards where you're getting a bunch of growths, now you're going to specifically buy cards that have those growths because you're like, I'm getting so many passively that I need to get cards that let me actually take advantage of these abilities. So the cards that you play really do drive what you're doing the rest of the game, and I like that a lot too. And just the fact that it is simultaneous is really enjoyable for like staying involved when it's not
You're
your turn.
always engaged. Right? Like, and honestly, like there's been times where I've like when we played it async, and then even in person it was different. I was just like, I spend so much time when it's someone else's turn where I'm not engaged with something specifically, looking at what I have, how I'm gonna complement it, like, okay, how many cards do I have left that I can place in my tableau? How many cards do I need to hit this goal requirement? Like, there's enough that you're thinking about. There's always something going on that I never felt like I'm waiting around or whatever. Like, not only am I piggybacking off people's turns, there's so much to consider that I feel like I'm always thinking about something. Yeah. But it never feels like too much to me, maybe at first, but after you get a hold of it a few times, it feels fine. But I think the way you described it as addicting is the thing. Like, I feel like in many ways, I'm addicted to having games of this going on Board Game Arena. I'm addicted to like wanting to play it more in person and play with the components and stuff. Like, it's a really fun game. And I think based on its popularity too, I imagine we'll probably, knowing the board game space and stuff, we'll probably see expansions and stuff like that.
I would not be surprised.
I'm curious about how they would do that hopefully without overcomplicate, but maybe that's where they can make the yellow and blue actions more desirable, more interesting, and just kind of, instead of trying to expand the game, more just like fix the little issues I have with it, try to even make it a more solid package, you know?
Yeah. And that's they're not like a huge publishing company, so I don't know what their kind of like play testing resources are compared to like some of the bigger publishers kind of thing. So yeah, it could be that an expansion comes out and addresses some of the kind of like more minor issues we had. One thing I want to add real quick is about the actions that I think is really cool is that, you know, you were talking about, the other players passively get to like some partial benefit. I like that the active player is basically getting, no matter which action you pick, you get 2 benefits, and then the passive players are getting 1 of those 2, but you get a choice. So even though it's passive, you're not just like, oh, I automatically get this thing I don't need. It's like you still have a choice between, you know, do I want the soil or do I want to compost cards into my deck, or do I want to draw cards or add the growth? I like that it's not just passive rewards. You are still involved in some sort of decision when it's not your turn too.
Overall, I love Earth. I'm going to be playing it for a while. I think pleasantly surprised. One of the big, I'm not surprised. Like, I didn't think I was going to like it, but I think having read the rules the first time, I was like, yeah, I've heard about games like this before. I didn't like Race for the Galaxy, so am I going to like it? Just kidding. But like, honestly, I love it. I'm going to keep playing it. That's Earth. It's an own it for me. Would it be an own it for you? You haven't played it still?
Oh, I think as of now,
we're on the scale.
Yeah, on the scale. It'd be teetering between play and own. I would think it would still be like a very, very high play it. Like this is, everyone should play it, and who knows? In a month, I might look back on this and say it is an own it. It's really solid, and it has that Arc Nova feel where I just feel compelled to keep playing it, even though I have a lot of issues with it. I don't know. It's weird.
Super good.
Solid game. All right, and the last one for our video today, the only one in this video that is not a review copy. This is Atiwa. I looked up the pronunciation before this, and I can't remember. Atiwa.
I hope you get it wrong, because then you can join the club.
I don't want to join the club. I don't want to be in the club. So this is one of Uwe Rosenberg's newer games. It's not his newest big box game, because that would be Oranienburger Canal. But previous to that, so this came out in 2022. Plays 1 to 4 players, and this is one of the more interesting games he has designed, because his games are often, like, obviously he does a lot of like farming based kind of games. And there are some similar things that you see in here that you've seen in a lot of his other games. It is worker placement and that kind of thing, but a lot of his other games feel like the mechanics probably came first, or even if the theme came first, there's things that you do in a lot of his other games that are like, this wouldn't make sense thematically, but for the purpose of the game, it has to be done, right? Whereas this game feels like everything is in service of the theme. And there's good and bad that comes with that. So the idea is, Atiwa, or again, Atiwa, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing this, is a region in Ghana that has, an issue like where it's very popular with like very high population of fruit bats, but they're currently endangered. So this game kind of focuses on that kind of environmental aspect. And there's like an actual like info booklet that comes in there that goes into detail, that's like has a lot of actual like real world facts about this region and about the people who live there. And there's also like a write-up from Uwe Rosenberg in the rule book talking about like how important this region is to him, and you know the deforestation, everything going on. And he really stressed how like that drove him to design this game to kind of bring attention to this. So I have to commend him first off for like feeling strongly about something and choosing to design a game to kind of bring more attention to it. And the theme comes through really well, even after reading through that info booklet. So you basically have your own little player board where you're going to be collecting cards. You end up having a tableau of up to a maximum of 8 cards. But you have a player board that has all these little resources, and there's all these little things that are covered up with the resources that you have on them. You have trees, fruit, bats, there's sheep or goats, wild animals, and I can't remember if there's one more I might be forgetting. But as you're gaining things that go onto your cards that you gain in your tableau and you take them off your personal board, it reveals some type of benefit on your board. So the more, let's say, trees I pull off, the further I get down this track, it's going to reveal more and more of these fruits. So during the kind of like income phase every round, the more of a certain piece that's missing on your player board, the more of the next piece down that you're going to get. And this might not make a lot of sense to me describing it, but with some B-roll in the background, it should kind of click. So it's like the more trees you get, then the more fruit you're going to get. And the more families that you have out, then the more food that you're going to need to feed those families. And the more goats you have, the more passive food you're going to gain, because like for every goat, the idea is that you can milk them to get 1 food each. Yeah. But you can instead slaughter the goat to get the 3 or 4 food instantly, so you have a big amount of food, but then that goat goes back onto your board, so you're not getting the passive like milking income. So it's this kind of organic board where things are going onto the board and off the board constantly throughout the game, and it's this kind of shifting thing where which direction do you want to go in. But going back to what I was saying before about everything being kind of in service of the theme, the good and the bad is the theme comes through really well. That's the good part, right? Is the theme comes through really well. It's really interesting, and you kind of learn about the theme as you're playing. Like you might not have understood exactly what the theme was when I gave you the rules explanation of the game, but as you play, things kind of make sense, right?
Yeah, more than after us.
Yeah, exactly. More than after us, that's for sure. Yeah. But as a result, it doesn't leave a lot of room for variability or doing things differently, because it kind of feels like there's a correct, best way to play the game, and every time you play, you're just sort of getting better and more efficient at playing the game well. Yeah. So I've played this, I should say, I've only played this solo and 2 players so far. Mm-hmm. For a while, I thought stubbornly that I was going to wait to play it with 3 and 4 players and all this stuff before covering it on the channel. But I realized more and more that with each subsequent play, I'm getting a little bit better about at the game, discovering, like learning a bit better how to be efficient and that kind of thing. And if I continue to introduce new players, like it's one of those games where I don't think playing it over and over and over is going to like give any additional like benefits to me, right? Like at this point, I've kind of seen all there is to see. Whether I'm playing solo or 2 players, each game is just, am I being more or less efficient? Yeah, the cards you get in your tableau give you slight different locations. Maybe you're going to have more wild animals this game, or next game you're going to have more goats, or you're going to have more families. But in the grand scheme of things, things don't look too different from one play to the next, right?
Yeah, and I think that even after the very, like when we first played, I think that was both of our first plays of it, right?
Yeah, I had played it solo before that, but yeah, that was my first 2-player play.
Yeah, and like I remember leaving that and thinking, yeah, like I had a really fun time with it. There's a lot of cool mechanics. The thing you're talking about pulling things off of one board and having to put them back, but am I willing to put that back because I'm going to get less from it?
Yeah.
I found that really engaging. It was really fun, kind of puzzly. But I said as soon as the game ended, I was like, my only concern is it feels like I saw everything the game had to offer after one play.
Yeah.
And it's because, yeah, like you said, like the theme and the way it's integrated does feel like it's not that every game is going to have the same cards or whatever they're called, the little 3x3s and stuff coming out, but like it felt like, okay, like that is how I would approach it next time. And even though that they might come out differently or my opponent might do some things a little bit differently, I'm not going to deviate in a major way.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm spoiled also with like games like Agricola and Feast for Odin. I mentioned both.
Oh, I'm glad.
Okay. But like those are, you're never gonna like. I've never played a game of those where I'm like, oh my god, like I feel like I've seen everything this game has to offer. It's the exact same, because whether it's the cards coming out in Agricola, or even if these thrown to a lesser extent, or whether it's which island board I go for, like there's just enough, whether I go for animals or not, like everything feels like there's choice and there's differentiation. It's not that there's none of that in Atiwa, but it's just that there wasn't nearly as much as I would come to expect from an Uwe game, or I would want for it to compete against the other big box Uwe games, even like Newsfjord and stuff like that. Like, yeah, so even Glass Road and stuff like all those feel like I've had more differences game to game than I would with this.
Yeah. And I think part of it is even the way that the scoring works, because there's certain scoring conditions that just give you so many points that you can't really ignore them. So like, it would be cool to be able to try a strategy where you don't really get many families, but it just doesn't make sense to do. Like, you're just not going to get a good score, because having the families, like, you need to have families and then train them to be able to have extra spots to hold bats, which, like, the more bats that you can hold is good for you, and the more families you have, like, the scoring goes up so high by having a bunch of these families out there in your area. So like, you wanna, even though you think like, I kind of want to try this, the scoring is basically telling you like, you're gonna fail if you ignore this thing. So it just feels like it kind of pigeonholes you a little bit, and then there's a little bit of variability in there in terms of how do you ultimately get to that end goal. The route might be a little bit different, but you're usually trying to end up with the same type of game state at the end. So even playing it solo and getting a higher score each time, eventually I just got to a point where like, yeah, it could get maybe cutthroat or interactive playing this with 3 or 4 players, but do I really care to explore the system a lot more? So this is a play it for me. Just compared to the other ones we talked about even, I would put this below Earth. I don't enjoy this quite as much as Earth. The tough thing about this is that we're talking about Uwe Rosenberg. The guy has designed how many like masterpiece games out there, right? Like if this was some designer we had never heard of who came out of nowhere with this, we would probably be trying to like get the word out and tell people like, whoa, you should keep an eye on this designer. Like this is really cool. But it's just, if I'm going to sit down to play an Uwe Rosenberg game that takes an hour minimum, there's just so many other options that are going to come ahead of this. Like this isn't even in the first 5 or 6 that I'm going to take off the shelf. So it's just like, it
would be a play for me as well. I definitely enjoyed it, and I would play it again, but it's not going to be my first Uwe choice. And I feel like after I played it like, you know, another 3, 4, 5 times or something, at that point I might be like, at that point maybe I am like, I don't know that I want to play it anymore. You know, then there's just, at that point I'm doing the same thing again.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess we should really quickly comment on the actual worker placement, because it is the type of worker placement where only one worker can go in each spot, but most of the rewards you can find in like 3, 4, 5 different spots throughout. So it's like, if you need 1 bat this round, it's not like someone going to the bat space is blocking you out. It's like, go get a bat somewhere else. But yeah, anyways, so that's Atiwa. If you're a big Atiwa. If you're a big fan of Uwe Rosenberg, or you're just looking to see him do something different, this is definitely worth at least checking out. It's just hard for me to recommend that anyone goes and buys this game ahead of one of his other, you know, middle to heavyweight games that has a lot more to offer long term. So this
video has now become monumental for 2 reasons. One, we coined the term mumble games going forward, and if we ever design our own board games for some reason, our companies are not going to be called Mumble Games. It has to.
I don't want to make Mumble Games.
No, we don't have to. We just have to call it Mumble Games.
I don't want to be part of it.
I don't want to be a pirate.
You're going to be the first pirate. But I don't want to be a pirate.
And the other one is this I think the first one I've ever had to correct you in a pronunciation.
Yeah, maybe, possibly.
Clip it right
and
here.
And it will be the last.
Yeah, it will be the last. That's it. Those are the 4 games we talked about here. So again, that was...
Let's get them back on screen.
Yeah, let's do it. So we've got... After Us, which was a skip from me and a skip from Carlo. Earth, which was an Own It from me, and slightly below
probably
Own It.
Probably a very high Play It, almost in Own It for Earth for me.
And yours?
Play It and Play It. I don't even know which one of these I like more. They're probably pretty comparable. Honestly, I think maybe Wizards. I might like Wizards of the Grimoire a bit more. I think it's got more legs to it. Even though this is an impressive thematic integration, but
totally. Otherwise, that is it. Let us know if you've played any of these, if you agree with us, if you disagree with us. Again, that's just our opinion. If you think that based on what we've said about any of these games, they're up your alley, don't let us stop you from getting them. People always, all the time, like games that other people don't. That's the best thing about any kind of hobby like this. So let us know if you like these games, and if so, what draws you to them, or if you don't, why you disagree with us. And
again, in case you missed it, 3 of these 4, just not Atiwa, but the other 3 are all on Board Game Arena if you want to try any of them.
So you can easily go on there and try them. So yeah, let us know in the comments. Let us know what other type of games you'd want to see us cover, especially if you've heard us talk about them, but you haven't seen a review from us yet. Let us know. We have some ones that we are going to prioritize for some reasons, but if we hear from you and say, we really want to hear what you think about this game, and it's one we have or are going to be playing, maybe we'll put it up the list, so let us know.
One quick thing I should mention, just for those who are like maybe longtime viewers of the channel, I might not be appearing on the channel a whole lot over the next couple months or so. We'll see. As of the filming of this video, I'm expecting our second child sort of any day now. My wife
It could be right now.
Yeah, I can check my phone. No, but my wife's actually passed her expected due date already, so I'll see what kind of filming I can do. Maybe I get a break, come over here and film with Dylan once in a while, or Brayden, or I film a solo video at home when I get an opportunity. But
his wife's actually at the hospital not giving birth, but he has to prioritize on the plate skipping, obviously.
Yeah. No, priorities. So yeah, I'll see you guys when I see you.
Yeah. And otherwise, thank you so much for watching. See you next time.